All right. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the Dominance Academy. This is your host, Mr. Justin. All right. Hope you guys are having a nice weekend. I know that I am. Because it's always a good time to be a man when you're a man. It's gotta suck to try to be a man when you're not a man. All right. So here we are. I kind of wanted to revisit some of the nice guy stuff, because quite frankly, it doesn't go away. I talk to new guys every single week with nice guy problems. And it's the sort of disease that just simply does not have a cure. It just keeps coming back and back and back and back. It's like the common cold. It just adapts to the new generation and it just proliferates throughout culture. And because of our, endlessly interconnectedness through media, it just spreads even faster. And along with it, the copes, the defense mechanisms, the rationalizations, the defenses, right? Like what was this? There was this guy's thing on Instagram, and it was something about like, the girl left. The girl left because she was not getting the emotional stimulation. And I was thinking like, she was seeking elsewhere. And I was thinking to myself, well, shit, why wouldn't she just find it at home? Why doesn't she find it at home? Oh yeah, women will. This is what it was. It was women will destroy a perfectly good relationship. And then it goes on to say, it was just a meme, chasing temporary feelings. So a woman will destroy a perfectly good relationship while chasing emotional stimulation. And I'm thinking to myself, my first thought was, and I commented on it, I said, why isn't she getting that at home? There's that rhyme. Why roam when you can get it at home? And so you got to think like, well, what is he doing? That's what I always think. What is he doing? What is he not doing? And the thing is, and I'll point this out to guys, and they're like, man, you're always saying it's men's fault. You're always saying it's men's fault. And I'm like, okay, fine. I won't say it's your fault. You're perfectly fine. This is a problem of the woman, This is her issue. And but you do not get to stand up and say that you want to be the leader. Sorry. You can't say I'm going to be up front and then not take the blows that come from being up front. You have to be willing for everything. Willing for the control, willing for the direction, willing for the respect, but also willing to take the heat when things go awry. And that's just how it works. You can't say, I want all the good shit and only the good shit. Like, that's what children do. Like, are you a grown man? Like, you got to start thinking, acting, and speaking like one. Not some, aged child. A child in an aged body. You can't operate this way. What the hell was that? Okay. So here we are. We're going to talk a little bit about the nice guy syndrome. And we've jumped into that a little bit, about where that shit comes from. It's really common, but not guaranteed, but it's really common that, boys raised without a father will develop some kind of strange codependent relationship with their mother, where they spend many years learning and developing a sense of self that is related to getting her validation. And either he gets it from her or he doesn't get it from her. And so if he doesn't get it from her, then he goes on a quest to working hard to get her attention and her validation, or he doesn't get it and he gets it and he feels like a good boy, or he doesn't get it and he is just forever wounded. He never feels good enough. She never sees him, right? And so he goes through life trying to perform, and maybe at some point he decides to give up. And it's still always stuck in this paradigm of not being good enough for, the mom that would never recognize him. Or he grows up getting exactly what he wants, but he becomes, her little pet, her little puppy. That's what turns into him. She doesn't do it to him. He actually does it to himself, unknowingly, right? But he still does it. And so then he learns that, if I'm a good boy, if I'm obedient, if I'm helpful, if I'm attentive, then I get the emotional drugs that I need. But, there's a point in every man's life when he realizes that his kindness has turned into somewhat of a disguise. And not the mask that he thought he wore, but something quieter. And that's an erasing of his edge. So that's where we're going to begin. They're told to be safe, reasonable, inoffensive, to sands their corners down until nothing cuts, nothing scares, nothing scrapes or stirs. And for a while, it works. People like you, you get approval, you get tolerance, you get nothing that truly feeds you. But then one day you notice that the people that you want most to feel you can't. And that's the death of the nice guy. Because niceness isn't virtue. Really, niceness is management. It's always managing the self, constantly. And it's a way of saying, please don't see me as a threat. But when a man is terrified of being a threat, he also loses his ability to be a promise. And the feminine can feel that instantly. The difference between a man who has mastered his darkness and the one who's still hiding from it. When she meets the first kind, her body relaxes, not because he's safe in the way of soft things, but because his energy doesn't leak. She can sense that he's not waiting for permission to exist. When she meets the second kind, she has to stay on guard because she can feel the instability under all that politeness. The nice guy thinks he's protecting her from his aggression. What he's really doing is denying her the feeling of his solidity. She doesn't need a man who won't harm her. She needs a man who knows he could but won't. That's a different frequency of safety. So this first death, the death of the nice guy, isn't the loss of empathy. It's the end of manipulation by approval. And when a man stops performing his virtue and starts embodying his presence, that's when it really happens. Think of the two kinds of stillness: the stillness of fear and the stillness of control. One shrinks away, the other contains. The first one says, I hope this is okay. The second says, I know where we are. The feminine feels that the second stillness as if it's gravity. When a man speaks from that place, he doesn't ask to be trusted. He becomes trust itself. He's not waiting for feedback before acting. He's already centered. He trusts in his own being, and the world organizes around that center. That's what permission really looks like. Women don't want men to dominate them, not in the way that nice guys think. They want men who know what to do with the power and how to show up. They want to see if man can stay steady when her emotion floods, when her chaos tests, when her beauty overwhelms. That's not a game. It's a biological test of your nervous system. Because if you can't stay calm, then she can't let go into you. And this is where the nice guy panics. He tries to fix, he tries to soothe, bargain, he even retreats. He has this stillness of fear. The steady man breathes, he feels everything, he stays, he can move about, like if he needs to. He becomes the shore that her tide keeps returning to. Every time a man does that, every time he holds his ground without closing his heart, he's teaching the feminine that she can rest. That obedience and surrender aren't humiliation, but relief. You can hear it in her breath when she finally stops performing strength. You can see it in her eyes when she stops scanning for danger and starts listening again. That's the hunger for permission. To stop being the manager of everything. To trust that someone else's structure won't collapse. But most men never get there, because they're still addicted to being liked. They want obedience without ever creating safety. And they think being nice is what creates the safety, which actually does the direct opposite. They want devotion without ever becoming dependable. When you're still trying to earn approval, you can't give permission. You're a beggar trying to sell security. The death of the nice guy is the beginning of authority. Not dominance as control, but dominance as containment. The capacity to hold another person's intensity without flinching. That kind of authority doesn't come from posturing or volume. It's a nervous system language. It says, I've met my own darkness. I've made peace with it. You're safe here, even when you lose yourself. The paradox is that the only men who can truly make space for the feminine surrender are the ones who've stopped apologizing for their power. So when I talk about the psychology of obedience, I'm not talking about teaching someone to kneel. I'm talking about that inner shift that happens when safety is no longer a performance. A woman's obedience isn't about her weakness. It's a biological response to stability. Her body can only soften when it believes it's protected. That protection isn't about walls. It's about coherence. When you build that coherence by knowing your limits and enforcing them without hostility, by speaking from the diaphragm instead of the throat, by telling the truth even when it costs you validation, each time you do, something ancient wakes up inside her. She doesn't always have words for it, but she feels it. It's the permission to stop negotiating reality and just be in it. The hunger for permission is not submission to a man. It's surrender to a moment of trust. But a man has to be trustworthy first. That's the part that most skip. Before she can obey you, you have to obey something higher than the both of you. Call it integrity, call it discipline, call it self-governance. At the Academy, we call it our Constitution. That's what she's reading in you. When you bend to impulse or to principle. That's why she tests you. Every argument, every pushback, every doubt, every flash of emotion is her unconscious trying to measure whether you're real. If you crumble or dent or lose your balance, she can't rest. If you meet her with quiet steadiness, she exhales. The nice guy, he hears that test and he takes it personally. The grounded man understands how the feminine learns who she's safe with. When you stop fearing her storm, she stops needing to create one. And here's where most men get confused. They think surrender means control when it really doesn't. It means polarity, the tension between chaos and order, between flow and frame. Both are sacred. Neither exists without the other. When a man disowns his authority, he forces a woman to carry it. When she disowns her chaos, she kills her own aliveness. The relationship dies in politeness. What she wants, even if she can't say it, is a man who doesn't need her to make him feel strong, but whose strength makes it safe for her to feel everything. And that's where obedience stops being about power and becomes about trust. So let's take a step into her world. One second, guys. That's right, kitten. All right. I just want to check on you guys for a second. All right. Let's see here. Yes. Yeah, once again, Guns, thank you so much. Appreciate you, man. Right. So jumping back in, looking more into her world. All right, because I know you guys love to talk about women. So when you speak about obedience and permission, you're really talking about the architecture of trust. The feminine psyche, when stripped of conditioning, has rhythm. It's openness, contraction, release, return. It's cyclical and moves like breath. When she feels unheld, the cycle locks at contraction, hypervigilance, control, self-containment. A woman doesn't obey because she's told to. She obeys when she recognizes coherence. Her body tracks signals long before her mind does. Tone, breath, posture, pacing. Masculine steadiness works like a tuning fork and tells her nervous system, you can exhale here. That's the start of obedience. Not subservience, but synchronization. Every human nervous system craves predictability. But in the feminine form, that craving often expresses as a longing to be guided, not ruled. Just need to highlight something. Okay. When you hold your center while she storms, you are quietly proving that her emotion will not unmake you. That's how her interior guard dog finally sleeps. Most men miss that moment. They try to explain her out of her emotion, or fix it, or escape it. But when a man stays steady, listening, breathing, waiting until her words catch up to her feelings, something in her rewrites an old story. It says, maybe I'm not too much. And that's the real permission she's starving for. You can't manufacture it. You can only live in a way that makes it possible. That means you obey your own code. You keep your word even when no one's watching. You don't use calm as superiority. You use it as a ballast. Over time, she stops orienting toward her fear and starts orienting toward your steadiness. In the psychology of obedience, there's a paradox. The more secure the frame, the freer the surrender. Too tight, and she feels trapped. Too loose, and she feels unsafe. The art is elasticity. Structure that adapts but doesn't collapse. Picture it like a dance. In a well-led waltz, she's not counting steps. She's feeling the direction. Your presence tells her where the edge is. That's what lets her lose herself without getting lost. When that rhythm sets in, obedience becomes a form of communication. It's her way of saying, I trust you enough to follow your lead. And your steadiness is a way of saying, you will not lose yourself here. But this only works if you can bear the weight of her projection. The more she trusts, the more she'll test. It's unconscious. Her system checking whether the ground holds still. That's why consistency matters more than charm. Charm draws her curiosity. Consistency develops her devotion. Inside her, obedience isn't passive. It's an active choice to align with you. It takes effort to release vigilance. That's why false dominance, men who posture, men who command without empathy, feels repulsive to her body. She's not responding to words. She's reading resonance. When a man speaks from grounded conviction, her body hears stability. When he speaks from a wounded ego, her body hears threat. That's why tone, not content, dictates outcome. So your task isn't to demand obedience, it's to become worthy of it. to hold a structure strong enough that she can stop performing competence and rediscover sensitivity. This is the hunger for permission, the longing to set down vigilance, to stop bracing for disappointment, to be led by someone who won't exploit her openness. If you listen carefully, you'll notice it everywhere. In the way she softens when she feels understood, in the way she tests when she doubts your depth. The feminine tests not to torment, but to locate the edge of safety. Every time you meet that test with steadiness instead of ego, you teach her body a new truth, that safety exists within you. Obedience is born from that repetition. It's muscle memory. Over months or years, it matures into reverence, not worship of a person, but respect for polarity and where it's coming from, the way each side completes the other. For men, that means embracing leadership as stewardship. For women, it means embracing surrender as strength. Both are disciplines, both require self-knowledge. If either side loses humility, the balance collapses. Domination without empathy becomes tyranny. Surrender without discernment becomes erasure. So when both stay conscious, obedience becomes communion. At that level, her following isn't obedience in the old sense. It's trust translated into motion. His leading isn't command. It's service translated to clarity. Together they form a circuit. His steadiness feeds her openness. Her openness deepens his steadiness. And when that circuit hums, the whole world around it feels it, or the whole world around them feels it. Friends notice their calm, strangers feel drawn to their presence, and it's not magic, it's just coherence. So at its core, this psychology of obedience is about nervous systems learning to trust again. It's what happens when a man stops proving and a woman stops defending, and both remember how to breathe in each other's company. That's where the nice guy truly dies, when he stops performing decency and becomes dependable. That's where the guarded woman finally exhales, when she realizes she doesn't have to hold the frame anymore. And that's where leadership and surrender stop being opposites and become mirror images of the same discipline, the art of staying open while standing firm. And that's the work. It's not glamorous. It's just two people learning how to hold and be held without losing themselves. And there was something that I wanted to go back on. This statement that says that's the start of obedience. It's not subservience, but synchronization. And that's whoops. Okay. Synchronization is a really interesting form of obedience, because, like, what is that? It's two rhythms coming together into a single rhythm. I remember when I was a kid, I loved watching the wiper blades on my parents' car during a rainstorm. And they had slightly different rhythms, ever so slightly different rhythms. And eventually they would come back and they would be working together. And then slowly they would go apart. And like one motor was maybe a little bit more worn out than the other. And then eventually they'd come back together in sync. And they would start, cleaning together at the same pace. And that's synchronization, right? And the synchronization absolutely starts with you. There's no other way around it. It's one direction. That's how it has to start. And you can't rely on her to start that motor, really. You have to be the one to start that generation. And the only way to go about doing that is through your consistency. Your consistency in, how you see yourself and how you live, right? So she has clear indication of what type of man you are. And you don't want it to be confusing. And a great way a great way to be confusing is to switch yourself up in order to remain in her good graces. Man, that becomes like the biggest smoking gun. The absolute biggest smoking gun. There's one thing that I wanted to, what did I say? Tell me, 1 second here. So this notion of, obedience and the hunger for permission, inside her, right? Inside her, there exists a deep hunger. Like, I don't think you guys understand that it doesn't feel good to the spirit of women what they're doing. Like, as far as like, this like modern, strong, independent woman. All right, it feels good on the surface, okay? Like kind of like him drinking, right? You get a few drinks in you, it feels good on the surface, but what's really happening? Like your liver is trying to process literal poison. Like if you consumed raw alcohol, you would die. Like raw grain alcohol, like, when it first, before it gets all distilled and all that stuff, if you consumed it, they would totally poison the shit out of you. So alcohol is straight poison. Okay. I mean, it tastes good. It's fun to drink, but let's not lie about it. So, but on the front end, it's like, hey, we're having a great time. This is fun. I love this. Let's enjoy ourselves, And that's kind of what's happening with them. And it's almost like they have no choice but to double down and say, I love this. Right? But after 8 to 10 hours of work, say like in a big city, and you come home to this small apartment and there's nobody there, or you have like roommates, all girls, who are doing the same exact thing, who will maybe otherwise try to distract you with nonsense. Like you're all working together to like, let's not acknowledge the truth here, that this choice is shitty. It's not fun. It doesn't feel invigorating. It's just invigorating only on the surface. But really, what's underneath that? I'm happy to be proven wrong, but underneath that is this hunger. And it's this hunger for permission. And all that says is please. That's all it says. But, you'd be surprised at how hard it is. You guys think that, what's that red pill-ism where they say like girls live life on easy mode? In some respects, they do. Sure. Guys treat them differently, especially if they're very pretty, right? Society just treats them differently. And that's fine. Whatever. I'm not jealous because I don't want to be a woman. I don't want I don't want people to bend in that way for me. But anyways, hang on. So they don't want to be a woman, so don't get jealous of their shit. But they're not actually living life on easy mode, because what they really desire, like what's truly just the base code that's in there, is the strong desire to fall into a man. It's part of the feminine core to just want to pour in. And this is it's just that one line of code. And when that can't happen, despite having hundreds or thousands of perceived options, and you try a few times and it's just nope every single time, because you're dealing with mostly guys who have nice guy syndrome that ends up popping up in, various ways. Hey there, kitten. Good to see you, little one. So So you guys, but of course, these like red pill angry simps, like they really can't see the forest for the trees. They can't see past their own frustration. They can't see past their own nose. And they're just angry because they think, shit, if I had the options that girls have, I would be getting laid every single day, right? They wouldn't give a shit. But it's different. It's different for a woman. They cannot operate that way. They cannot let so many people inside them. It alters things. And no, the DNA thing is not true. That shit's been debunked. But I think it's called like chimerism or some just chimerism. But no, it's not real. It does not exist. So, Hey, Kitten, you're gonna have to rewind to the beginning because you missed the first part of the lecture. So you're gonna have to rewind after I'm done here. But yeah, so they don't have the options really to get what I was just talking about. Where they say, yeah, this guy has he's got that solid internal framework where I can just sense it off of him. And you think that it can't, but they can. And like playing hours of video games after just working and then going to sleep and then working again and then playing hours of video games and then going to sleep, like this doesn't develop who you are. And surely guys will say, well, it's because there's no reason, there's no point. I'll just have my little place and have my recliner, my TV, my game system, and whatever. That makes me happy. And I know it doesn't, because it's not fulfilling. There's chance happiness, right? Just through surface integration with things, but it's not really fulfilling, right? Because I think part of fulfillment has to do with recognition. It's someone saying, I see you here, like here in this reality, on this earth, in this life. I see you. And not only do I see you, there's something effective about you. Like you affect me in some kind of way. And I think that's where the whole trolling thing kind of grew and blew up, because I think it largely has to do with people who are unseen and they can't get it in any other way but to provoke. If I can provoke you, you will look at me. And that to me just screams of a child who was not paid attention to when they were growing. I know plenty of people who were like this, and I know of their upbringings. Big families, they were stuck in the middle. The young ones got attention, the older ones got attention, but the ones in the middle, they got fucked. And many of them figured out at a young age, so if I terrorize the cat, I'm going to get scolded. I'm going to get attention put on me. If I fail the math test, then more attention gets poured onto me. It's not exactly the best attention, but I get it. They're looking at me, and that's basically, low-level, unsophisticated trolling. As you grow up, you get smarter, you get more clever, and now you've got basically professional trolls out here. All just really wanting someone to say, hey, I see you. But at that point, they're so rolled into the thinking, the mindset, and that it just has become them. There's no going out. And that's the thing. If you spend too much time, I think, in a particular way of being, it becomes harder and harder to get out of it. Like if you feel yourself getting overweight, if you take care of it, like right then and there, you say, okay, listen, I got to address this. There's a better chance that you'll be able to succeed. But if you put it off month after month, year after year, and now you're 50, 60, 70, 100, 200 pounds overweight. Now you've got a huge problem on your hands. Pardon the pun. But there's it becomes, progressively more difficult the longer you stave these things off. So in the same way, if you find yourself pandering to women in order to gain their good graces, so that you look good in their eyes, so that they'll like you, then you gotta, once you start realizing that, that's when you have to start taking action, because it just gets harder. You don't want to be, like, a guy in his mid-30s and he's still doing this shit. Like, that's fine. You're 15 years old, and just because you think the girl is pretty, you get her a bouquet of flowers. Fine, you're fucking 15, But I know grown men who do this. One of my guys, he would like buy her jewelry or something. She flew out to him, like spends a few days together. They do a bunch of different stuff, and he gets her a bracelet, like a little gold bracelet. And a few weeks ago, he didn't even know of her existence. Why are you doing this? And not only that, like just a short timeline and all that stuff. How do you think that's going to affect her? Right? Is that really going to bring about what you want? Which is the real recognition, which is someone saying, without saying, I really see you and you have a profound effect on me. But you think that bracelet's going to do that? No. It's your presence. Your presence does that. Your presence says, thank you for being here. Thank you for seeing me. Sir, Daddy, my Lord, what have you. I mean, you don't need those titles, but you know what I'm saying? It kind of puts it into perspective. That doesn't come from anything outside of you. The outside stuff is fun for sure. If a girl is doing really well, she's consistent, and you're doing a good job of leading her and influencing her, and she's developing in the direction that you'd like her to, then by all means, get her something. And when you do, here's a little tip, like any kind of reward. Okay, whether, if it's bigger, it requires more words, but you should always put some kind of words behind it. Whether it's as simple as good girl, right? Or you're giving her a gift or an experience or something like that. It's very important to explain why. And say, hey, listen, baby girl, I've been watching you do this. I had you learn this. You're doing really well. It's been super consistent for the past 3 weeks. And to bring some acknowledgement to your efforts and consistency, I bought you this, or we're going to go do this. Take a trip somewhere, I don't know, or go to some event or what have you. That's really fun. And that absolutely must happen. Like, don't just like give it and explain, so that she understands that her efforts matter, for one, and for two, that you're watching, that you're not just sleeping on her behaviors and habits. You're really watching stuff. And that can sometimes add pressure, and that's okay, right? Because it's not terrible pressure. It's pressure coming from you, pressure coming from a guy that she really likes or that she loves. So this is important. Okay. So whenever a girl does something, recognize it. You don't even have to be in a DS relationship. And by doing so, it positions you as an authority. Not blatantly, but it's this subtle shift towards you being positioned as the authority. Because like I said, it says without saying, I've been observing you for the past X amount of days or weeks or what have you. You go, okay, here you go, baby. Now pull them onto your lap. Say, hey, stop what you're doing. Come over here. Sit on my lap, right? You have her sit on your lap, hold her, put your arm around her, grab her ass. and have her look, turn her chin to you and grin the eyes, and then explain to her, very clearly. Don't use terminology, like your vibe has been good. I really liked your vibe lately. Like, no, be really, really detailed, but without being too wordy, right? Be clear about what you're approving of. And you say, here, I got you this little thing as acknowledgement. And she's going to light up. Her little heart's going to melt. And that's going to encourage more of the same behavior. And this is really kind of like leans into the power of positive reinforcement, versus correction. Because if you're having to like punish or correct too much, that really shows that you're missing some steps. I wouldn't say like you're doing it wrong. Because if you're already in the position to be correcting and rewarding and all that stuff, then you're doing something right. But I'd say if you're having to correct too often, then you're doing something wrong. And no, it really doesn't have much to do with her. I mean, if she's got a faulty memory or something like that, then maybe you need to get her some ginkgo biloba. Yes. What do you think, kitten? Is ginkgo biloba a good idea? Yeah. But yeah, so the whole, I like that whole idea of the permission thing, right? Obedience and the hunger for permission. Because, to be in a state of permission, of like asking for permission, wanting permission, like this is a very high level of submission, very high level. Man, I need a comb or something. This shit keeps turning up and tickling my nose. But yeah, that's a very high level of submission, or depth, depending on how you want to look at it. And because that's when they're at a point of being free. They're free from the pride. They're free from the ego. That forthrightness. And this is, this shows like very strong development. 1 second. Yeah. And it's I understand, you guys want to get to the fun stuff, like you really do. And I like the fun stuff too. And there's a client of mine who he's putting together some writing for me about his experience as a student of mine. I mean, he's not done, but he's really kind of like you ever see like those cartoons where there's like a mud pit and there's somebody like walking through it and their boot gets stuck in the mud and they like reach down with their hands and they're like yanking on their own foot to pull their boot out of the mud. Well, he just got his second foot yanked out of the mud with a schlop. It said schlop, and he pulled his second foot out of the mud pit, and he's finally standing on something that's solid. Okay. I mean, the problem is his boots are all fucked, right? We'll deal with that later, but he's out of the mud pit. And I wanted to, hear from him, like get some description about his experiences, coming from the land of nice guy, where he was full of self-doubt. He was full of self-criticism. He had all these emotions. Like his emotions were so easily moved, so easily triggered. He had an edge to him, and it was the wrong kind of edge. It wasn't the edge that was beneficial. And and now he's becoming a lot more calm. He's a lot more observant, And he's really able to guide his relationship in a way that he couldn't before, because he's able to have vision. He's given himself permission. It's funny. It's like both sides of the slash, the D and the S, there's different levels of permission, or different types of permission. And for the sub, it's like she's giving herself permission to trust. She's giving herself permission to let go. And on the D side, on the Dom side of the slash, he's giving himself permission to grab the reins, giving himself permission to create. And this is paramount. It's absolutely paramount when you accept your own permission. Now, because before you get to that stage and you say, okay, I give myself permission, there's still, like, if that nice guy disease is still swimming around, it'll go, I give you permission, and it's going to refuse it. It's going to say, I don't deserve that. I can't do that. I don't want to do that. And over time, you learn to just kind of accept it. You accept the permission to create. And then you try it. And that's what he did. He tried just some small things to create some experiences that he just wanted to see. And lo and behold, his woman adapted like it was second nature. She adapted immediately. And she doesn't even have like full trust in him. It was enough trust to adapt. She's learning to trust. And the interesting thing, this is a funny little part about trust, is that it's not all about you. Okay, I know I mentioned that a few times in what I was reading, that that's a fundamental aspect of it. Okay, to trust you, right? Because you're on the outside. But there's also another part that you can only partially help her with, in a sort of ancillary way, and that's the trust for herself. Because girls will, throughout their lives, make some really bad decisions that cause all kinds of harm, and we're talking lasting harm emotionally, psychologically, and these leave deep, deep cuts on their mind and on their spirit, on their hearts. And they can sometimes learn to, like, shit, I don't have good judgment. I don't make the best choices for myself. Sometimes the ego steps in as armor to protect her from that objective reality. And sometimes it doesn't. But, when it doesn't, and there is that bit of vulnerability with the self, when she feels that when you're giving her the signal that she can trust you, then on her end, that's the beginning process. Again, see, you're always leading. That's the beginning process of her saying, okay, I'm going to trust myself to follow him. And so it almost is like she has to earn that from herself, which is really interesting. There's so much that certainly has to do with you. And there's so much that absolutely does not, that you can only affect in small ways. But if you weren't there, then, there would be no catalyst. So you certainly have to show up to be that catalyst, and, allow her to be challenged in that way, right? Because that's the thing with nice guys. The nice guys, they don't challenge. They don't challenge, they don't challenge that aspect of her, because he doesn't do anything to warrant her to consider trusting him, because everything about him just reeks of it's repulsive. So there's really no chance to have that challenge. But when you do show up, you're grounded, and you are such a way where you live by principle, you have what I call mountain mind, then this starts sending those signals, and that challenge gets closer and closer and closer. And you know what? There's no guarantee that she'll take herself up on that challenge. That's the gamble. That's the gamble right there. And I've experienced that. And it's tough. It's really tough. Because they'll come to that challenge and sometimes say, okay, here we go. I'm doing it. I'm going to trust myself to dive into him. And then other times they're like, and they're standing there at the edge of that cliff, like looking at this abyss and going, nah, I'm not doing it. And that's the way it goes sometimes. All right. So I say that to encourage you to understand that you can have the best game in the world. You could have the most solid, rock solid CPRs and your greatest program, fully integrated constitution. And if she can't meet that challenge of her own to trust herself, to make that step off into that abyss, then it's not going to matter what you do, because she's just not willing. She's too scared. And that's all right. And the reason why it's all right is because the mountain mind also has great acceptance for what is. The mountain doesn't try to change things. It observes and just accepts things as they are, right? Because you can't push someone further into themselves. You can't. You can encourage, you can support, you can possibly manipulate or coax, but really at the end of the day, you can't make them. Only they can take that step, into the darkness. And that's just how it goes. And, and it's very interesting when you come across a woman who says, you know what, fuck it. I'm doing this. Like, I want it. And if that happens, you best be prepared. You best be prepared for someone who's willing to dive into you. And they say, fuck, I really hope, I have faith. There is not hope. It's, I have faith that he's going to catch me. So you want to be prepared. You want to prepare yourself. Prepare your inner world. What is this phrase that I heard when I was growing up? Chance favors the prepared mind. And so, with respect to women, because I know a lot of guys, pretty much almost all guys, they want a woman in their lives. They want a woman in their lives that they can depend on. I mean, not in the same way that, she depends on you, but in a different way. But depending on them to show up and be consistent in their own way, then you have to work in order for that to be the case. But a lot of guys, you just want the want. You just want to be wanted, and you leave it at that. And I listen to dudes, typically younger guys, but sometimes older guys too, who have either they have no awareness of their nice guy disease, or they just don't care to really address any of it. And they just think that like a girl's just going to fall out of the sky and land on their lap. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. And it's funny. I think that's what I said. It's funny though, because, my sub, I think the first thing that I said to her when I greeted her online, I said, you'd look cute sitting on daddy's lap. And so it's kind of ironic that I'm bringing that up, about the guys thinking a woman's going to fall out of the sky. But she didn't, though. It was more so I was like kind of beckoning her onto my lap. And and the interesting thing is that she mostly sat down and was just like, do you think it's a little early for daddy? And she was right. And that's fine. It's fine. It's kind of these weird noises. I don't get it. I think all the animals are sleeping. But yeah, actually, and the funny part is that it took many months and lots of training to the point where she actually earns the right to call me daddy. And I think that's another thing that, like, you don't want to be too easy in giving this stuff away, because you want that thing so much. And really, for me, it was more about, it's just like kind of how I talk. I wasn't really addressing it in the, in the typical DS dynamic. It was just, just how I talk. I wasn't really thinking much about it. And then, like, some weeks, months go by, and I get through some other means of information that it's something that she wanted. And so after a number of months, I said, listen, you have your particular titles, there's sir and my lord. And I told her, you've earned the ability to now call me daddy, and I gave her my, the collar of engagement, which is like the stage of collar before the full ceremonial collar, right? Which is the permanent one that marks ownership. And she was pretty pleased by that. But anyways, but yeah, you don't want to get too caught up. And this is what guys, guys who are like just kind of, they're still a little wet behind the ears. And oh, excuse me just a second. Sorry about that. So yeah, I was saying that there's the dog. Guys they want the thing, they want the feel and the all the good stuff that comes from having the DS situation, and there's a lot of fun stuff. There's a lot of creative stuff, a lot of sexy stuff, and it's great. But without realizing that, they want to jump into that too quickly. They want to have that title. They want to set up that power differential right away. Okay. Now, as a man, he should have a certain level of this to begin with, in the sense that he should see himself as an authority, not an authority over her specifically. Okay. Whatever girl it is that you're talking to. Okay. But you should be able to have that sense of authority of yourself. Okay. So like, if you have like a judge, right? Whether the courtroom is empty or full, they're still a judge. They still have that sense of authority. Okay. You put them on an island, right? They still have that sense of authority. They don't require the other to be there. So that's what I mean by that. But you don't want to jump into that stuff right away, and a lot of guys do, right? They want to set up that quick thing where she's like, yes sir, like, no, you call me sir. And these are telltale signs of what's known as a fake dom, because they're they're reaching too quickly for that power differential. And really, like a greater sign of being a dominant is your patience. Is basically having this mindset of, hey, you can take all the time you need. I don't care. I'm not in any kind of rush here. And this is, I remember this is something that I told my submissive. She was kind of asking some questions and stuff, which she should have. And I said, listen, I'm not trying to push anything, and we only go as fast and as deep as you are willing to, because I'm not going to push my agenda. Okay. Like I know what it is, so I don't have to push it. I don't need it validated for me. It doesn't have to like make me feel good or anything. I know it, right? It's no big deal. And so really is when you exercise you embody patience, you give her free will, then this really like allows her to slowly start walking towards you in your direction. It's when you are doing the opposite of that. You're rushing, you're reaching for control, you're reaching right away for rules and things like that. Right away, you're saying, send me nudes, do this, play with your pussy, whatever. You're just like reaching for the control. That sends the signal. That's the impatience is not a grounded feeling, right? It's a bit scattered. It's a bit erratic. And this does not translate into the woman's trust, right? It doesn't inspire trust, right? Relaxation does. It's a very powerful thing to not need a woman, actually feel it and allow her to feel it. Yeah, because I know there's a lot of guys who like to posture that they don't need a woman, but really inside they're just as needy as before. They just realize that when they express it, it makes them sound like a simp. So they're like, well, I don't want to sound like a simp, so I'm going to sound like this guy, or I'm going to sound this way. But really inside, they're still the same dude because they haven't done any of the work. They just have spent enough time on YouTube to pick up some lines, some ways of thinking, but it's not ultimately changing who they are fundamentally and their relationship to women, the relationship to sex. And this is the fundamental. This is the 101. So if you're not working on that stuff, you're never really going to get the thing that you're truly after. Like it's really a wonderful thing when not only the woman is looking at you with trust and she's kneeling from her legs as well as from her heart. And she's basically saying, I'm putting my trust in you. I kneel before you. And on your end, there's no doubt in that. There's no fear. There's no and there's no mini parade inside. There's no celebration of it. Because your state is not pushed by any of that stuff. It's not pushed or pulled. It's not affected really. Okay. But that's the state that's required in order for her to actually kneel. Because if you're pushing or pulling, that's going to make her buck. It's going to make her scared. It's going to make her, make her ass clench. Tighten up, And, you don't want that, you don't want her anus to clench up. You want it to relax. Yeah. So she just said, oh my God. But so yeah, it's just a lot of ironies right? There's just a lot of ironies. So you have to let go, man. You really got to learn to let go of this stuff. And then it comes to you, but you just keep it on your mind. You just have to let go of, being swayed with the desire of particular outcomes. And this is what allows you to kind of live authentically, right? Because I think when you're grasping, you're not really living authentically. I really don't think so. There was this scene I loved when Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came out. I think I'm going to watch that movie again. Man, that was such a good film when it first came out. Blew my mind. And there was those two characters, right? There was Li Mubai, and he was the male character. And the woman, I forgot her character name. I think it was played by Michelle Yeoh. And they had this really strong respect and love for one another, just as people, as martial artists, as beings, right? They really just had a great appreciation, love, and respect for one another. But they never really did well at showing it. But it was there, and that's like a very common trope in a lot of anime and Asian film and things like that. Where this I can't show how I feel. And there's a scene where they actually had a moment together, and they weren't making out or anything. There was just this small room, and there was a table and a couple of chairs, and they sat with tea, I think. And they just sat there. Like, they didn't sit there and talk. They didn't get into stuff. They just sat there together. Not moving, not fidgeting about, just like being there, right? And that was an amazing scene. That really was. Because, and to me, that was kind of saying, I'm showing up so clearly as I am. You're showing up so clearly as you are, that we don't have to do anything. We can just be here. We could do other things, but we don't have to. We're just going to be here. And that's one of the best states. That's one of the best states you can possibly be in. Okay? Where you're not reaching, you're not grasping, you're not pushing, you're not pulling. And you're just settled. And this is, in my book, just from my view, okay, that this is what men should strive for. Okay. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't make strides in your life and have goals and things like that. That's not what I mean. You absolutely should. If that's what you want to do. But this has more to do with your state, your inner state. Like, you should not be feeling anxious, right? That's it's a fractured, frazzled sort of energy. Okay. You don't want that. You don't want the pitch of whatever's inside to be at a high pitch. You want it to be at the low pitch, like a low hum, right? Or a low rumble. That's where you want your internal pitch to be. Okay. A longer wavelength. And bass. Right? You want your interior to be more like bass rather than treble. Okay. And like I said, like that sort of thing really comes about by letting go of stuff and then dealing with the consequences of letting go, which is possibly panic, fear, what's that called? Withdrawal. Because you can absolutely get addicted to certain thought patterns, addicted to certain feelings. I've got one of my guys, like I mentioned, he took a break and then he came back and he realized that he had this addiction. He had this addiction to certain emotional patterns. And you don't think that you're like, oh, you can only get addicted to substances and things like that. And maybe we want to call it a habit, in this respect, but really it's an addiction, because when you stop, there's somewhat the symptoms of withdrawal, because your old buddy, right? Your old buddy of overthinking, your old buddy of worry, your old buddy of anxiety, he's gone. And we had such good times together, me and anxiety. Years and years together. What am I going to do without him? Right? Because that was a familiar lens in which to look at yourself and the world. And even sometimes you learn to get what you want, because there's copes that develop from that sort of thing. So but really just start to let go. And if any of this sounds confusing, right, go on the site and go to the contact section, and we can set up a time. Or on my site, there's a big red button, and you just press that, and that'll take you to my calendar, and we can talk about all this stuff, right, to get you on your path. Because the reality is, what's inside each guy is different. That's why all these discussions kind of have to remain mostly general, because what's happening for one gentleman is going to be different for another. Some of my guys, because of just whatever's going on inside them, they pick it up immediately. They can see the shift, and they're like, oh, I get it. All right, I'm good. And I think like my fastest student was like 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And he was like, boom, shot out like a fucking freight train. And, he didn't have a lot of hangups, right? He had a little bit, but not much. And it just made sense to him for whatever reason. Clicked into place, and he fucking just twisted that throttle. He was gone. And other guys, they're with me for years. 2-3 years. And that's okay, right? There's no fault in that. But it's just to say that our interior landscapes are all different. And that's why you can't just say, okay, I'm going to fix myself, or I want to change some things about myself, and then proceed to like subscribe to a bunch of YouTube channels. Like, that's not really how it's done. Right? Because that person, including myself, cannot speak to you directly. We have to keep things in general. So that's why the solutions and the things I talk about are kind of nebulous. In order to actually make it worthwhile, it must be tailored. And I don't say that as a sales pitch. I say that as a reality, right? Otherwise, there would just be like no therapist would actually have to have clients. You know what I mean? They just say like, hey, these are the things you got to do. And that's it. But that's not really going to work, right? Because I've got guys who they were stuffed in the closets when they were 5 years old by their angry mother and made to stay in there for 3 hours, while they had to pee, while they were hungry, that sort of thing. And this happened like multiple times for years, like multiple times, like throughout a month. And this went on for years. So the guys who didn't have that, well, they've got different challenges. That situations like that will absolutely shape your internal landscape. So, and the only real way to deal with that is, with guidance, because oftentimes we can't see ourselves for what we really are. See ourselves for the things that we hold on to. And, and this is why I have mentors of my own. You can get good at it, right? You can get better at seeing yourself than, say, previously, but you're not going to see everything. And that's why it's always important to have somebody who's objective, who's going to tell you the truth, who is not going to pull punches, but certainly not out there to break your nose. And, there's some sympathy or compassion involved. And they can show you yourself, maybe in pieces, so that it doesn't become overwhelming. And then that's how it starts. And it's just one step at a time. But that's really how men are. And unfortunately, you guys are, you've got the microwave mentality where I can just peel off the peel off the plastic cover, pop it in for 30 seconds, and it's done. And that's just not how it works. That you can't speed bake manhood. You just can't. So if you're young, cool, like get to work. It'll be faster than you think. And if you're old, whatever, get to work. Because I would hate to be on my deathbed and come to realizations and stuff that I could have handled a long time ago, but I just kept putting it off. I kept ignoring it, sweeping it under the rug. That's got to be an awful feeling. Now, of course, I'm in full acceptance of the notion that when I'm on my deathbed and I'm looking at myself, I know I'm going to say, damn, there's still more work that I need to do on myself. There's more development. There's more I could have learned. And that's just the way it is. That's just how the development goes. But, I don't want to realize that I could have done something years ago. And I know that I was aware back then as well. So, like guys who simply, you can feel it. You can feel it in your bones that something's wrong. That this just isn't computing. It's not working out the way you want it to, is it? And it's causing you pain. When you're operating as a man with a capital M, there's really no pain. I can't remember the last time, like when it was like due to a woman, that I felt sad or upset. Maybe I'll get annoyed here and there because a rule was forgotten or something along those lines, or maybe I'm dealing with a brat who purposely chooses to forget stuff, to forget, and that can be a little bit annoying. But I can't remember the last time that I was like really upset, like a true upsetness. Can't remember it. And that's the thing. Like when you've dealt with yourself properly and put in the time, and you didn't rush, you developed your patience, along comes fortitude. You become fortified. Like fortified cereal. Fortified with vitamins and minerals. And that's what you become. And so after that, it's like, what the heck is a girl gonna do or say or feel that is going to shift what I am? Because where I am and how I feel is the same as what I am. It's all together. The who, what, where, when, why, how, it's all together. There's just one answer. It's one embodiment. And like none of that shit gets thrown off because the girl's having a bad day or she's upset at you or, whatever, It just doesn't happen. And, you just got to get past that nice guy thing where he thinks that if he doesn't show his caring or, if he doesn't get like embroiled in whatever the hell she's got going on, then he doesn't care. And I know a lot of guys think this, that they want to show her that he cares, that he's involved, right? And it's from an emotional standpoint, right? Because you can be involved in a certain, like maybe your girl's going through something and you get involved, but that doesn't mean you emotionally get involved. You're just functionally involved, which is totally different. But they get emotionally involved to show that he's taking it seriously. He's taking her seriously. Oh my gosh, she really matters, right? And the funny thing is, when you break it down, when you break down the nice guy psychology, she doesn't really matter much at all to him. And then the irony, when you come into my neighborhood, you don't really care, but your capacity to care grows massive. And because there's no more trade-off, there's no transactional relationship to caring. It's not based on certain something. There's no more covert contracts. And this is really important. This is a really important aspect. Because when there's no more covert contracts, like unspoken deals where like, if I do this, then I expect this. If I take her out, I really want sex. I really want to have sex with her. Right? If I do this thing, then, I should get a kiss. And sometimes it's conscious like that, and sometimes it's not conscious, but it's happening. It's happening on, many levels all the time with these nice guys. And this is really where, the rubber meets the road. Because that sort of thing, that unseen contract, that covert contract, that no longer exists for the man. Only the boy. The man doesn't have these agreements, these silent agreements with the woman. And so he's free of that. And since he's free of that, it means that he cannot be affected by her, by whatever outcome, right? Because when you have a contract, even these mental ones that are quiet, there's still an expected outcome. That's the case with all contracts. There's an expected outcome. And so once you relieve yourself of this, you actually then have the truest ability to care, because it's no longer contingent on anything. Do you see what I'm saying? The nice guy apparently cares a lot. He really loves her, okay? But it's all based on a contract. It's all based on transaction. It's all got contingencies. And he's looking for his debt to be paid. This is not real. Like, all that shit is just done for himself. It's not for her. Okay? And so when, like I said, when you let go of that stuff, it's no longer transactional. There's no more little deal happening. You no longer feel like you're owed, right? Because that neediness is gone. So no woman owes you anything. Like, you don't care. Like, you're not looking for like, okay, when's this going to come back to me? You get your hand out, but like behind your back. That's nice, guys. They got their hand out, but that looks bad. So they keep their hand out. Okay, where am I here? Okay, they got their hand out, and then they slip it behind their back. But it's still there. You just can't see it. And neither can she. There's no more hands being laid out when there's no more hand being laid out looking for that those snacks, those little gifts or whatever, to come from her. So at that point, boom, you can give as much as you want, because you don't care. I mean, if you had like $200 trillion, like, would you care about giving your money away? No. Oh my gosh. Like, if I had that much money, I'd just be giving it to everybody. Who care at that point? Like, there's no possible way you could spend that much money or buy enough stuff or what have you. You know what I mean? Reminds me of that movie Brewster's Millions. If you haven't seen that movie with Richard Pryor, you should watch that. It's a good classic. Brewster's Millions. Like he was granted, he had to spend like $5 million or something in one day. And the only deal is that he couldn't give it away, and he couldn't have anything to show for it. So he couldn't have cars or buildings or, anything like that. And if he did, if he met the challenge, then he was able to keep like 20 million or something like that. It was an interesting deal, but fun movie. You should check that out. I think from the 80s, Brewster's Millions. But that's the boundless heart of a man. Now, of course, you don't give it away to people who don't deserve it. But in either case, it doesn't detract from you, because there's no get back. You're not looking for something in return, because you're always full. You've got $20 trillion worth of love inside you. You're not reaching the bottom. You're never going to be in a deficit, ever. Never, ever. But when you're not living in my neighborhood, you're just, you're looking for the payback, because you're like, wait a second, I've got limited resources here. I can't just give this away, and not be paying attention. I want this back. And you know what? There might be interest if it doesn't come back fast enough. That's how people who are in need. This is poverty type thinking. Okay. This is when people are in survival mode. Do you think you'd be in a financial survival mode if you had $20 trillion? The hell no. But if you only had $20, to your name, you'd be very reluctant to lend that out, or part of it. And if you did lend out part of it, you'd be really sharp about who has it and how soon is it coming back to you, because you fucking need that shit. And the same thing happens with a man's heart. And so when he is in a place of scarcity, which often connects to his ability to love and respect himself, then every little drop is accounted for. Every last drop. But it's like when you start filling your own cup with self-love and self-respect, self-praise, self-worship, then in self-reverence, then it's self-perpetuating. It can just fill itself up indefinitely, because it's not requiring that of other people. So when you give it to others, it doesn't even fucking matter. You're not being like, hey, I want to see that back in 3 weeks. Or you better do this because I did that. Because you're no longer living in scarcity. You're living within abundance. When there's abundance, it's bottomless. It's like the cornucopia thing. What's up, People's Field? Yeah. So I hope some of this was thought-provoking for you, that it has you considering different ways of being, right? Considering different ways of looking at yourself and your life. And perhaps that will lead to making different choices. And it's interesting. I don't remember much of the things that my father told me, but the one thing that really sticks out in my head is he told me, we're driving in the car. I was in the passenger seat, and he said, Justin, life is only but a series of choices. That's it. That's all life is. And that's the only thing of importance that I remember him telling me. And really, that's all it is. So, I'm hoping that some of the stuff that we covered tonight was thought-provoking enough for you to consider making different choices in how you see yourself, your choices throughout the day. Maybe for certain things that might be difficult, but you're going to do it anyways because, well, when's the last time you tried something that required discipline? and see if you could do it for a day. And this is a choice to saying, hey, you know what? I'm not only, well, it's saying that I'm acknowledging that there's other ways besides the way I've always done it. There's other ways of thinking besides the way I've always thought. And, if I can trust Mr. Justin and what he says, there's other ways that I can feel about myself, which can garner different things in my life. That can, if I trust what he says, that women will treat me differently. And they absolutely will. You just have to trust me a little bit. And then, also do what women do, learn to trust yourself, right? And that's the beginnings of putting faith in yourself. And that's the best possible faith you can have, is the faith in yourself. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. Forgot to run my banner. If she's on her knees, she must say please. Remember that. No blowjobs for free. Do not let women suck your dick for free. You must at least say please. I mean, come on. Common courtesy. Okay? Please and thank you. So after you bust, remind her of her manners. So while her mouth is full of cum, you say, what do you say? What do you say? Come on. And she's like, thank you. Their mouth all full. That's right. Good girl. Okay. Now drink your milk. So, yeah, manners always. So if anybody has any questions, go to the website, thedominance.academy.com. Go to the contact section, and in there you can write me anything you like. It'll go to my email, and I'll get back to you within 24 hours. Until then, have yourself a wonderful day, wonderful evening, and we will see you on the next one. Take it easy.